is the Regional Rehabilitation Centers for Youth. Guidelines on the cost of care and maintenance of youthful offenders, children in conflict with the law in Regional Rehabilitation Centers for Youth. The formulation of a set of guidelines on the cost of care and maintenance of youthful offenders or YO and children in conflict with the law or CICL in Regional Rehabilitation Centers for Youth is in response for the recommendation made by Dr. Joseph Hoffman in his study for these WD centers an institution to track the total cost of care in all facilities and consider gradually increasing the cost recovery for RRCYs from municipalities. So, the legal base for this act is legal base Article 194 of PD 603, Care and Maintenance for Youth Offender. The expenses for the care and maintenance of youth offenders whose sentence has been suspected shall be borne by his parents or those liable to support him, provided that in the case his parents or those liable to support him cannot pay all or part of the said expenses. However, the municipality in which the offense or the offender was committed shall pay 1/3 of the said expenses or part thereof. The province to which the municipality belongs shall pay 1/3, shall be borne by the national government. So the objectives, to come up with the standard cost of care and maintenance of YOs or youth offenders and CICLs in regional rehabilitation centers for youth as basis for computing per capita cost and determining the share of local government units for such costs. Second is to ensure maximum compliance of local government units to the provisions of Article 94 of PD 603, example given, to share the cost of care and maintenance of YOs and CICLs in regional rehabilitation centers for youth. And third is to protect the interests and welfare of YOS, CICLs in regional rehabilitation centers for youth. So the components and basis for computing the standard cost and care and maintenance. A is direct services cost. This pertains to cost or valuation of items and services that are directly consumed or by spent for the client, which consists of the following. So the first one is home services. A, food includes 3 complete meals and 2 snacks. Second is clothing, consists of at least 4 sets of clothing, each set consisting of outer clothing, underwear, and sleeping clothes. At least 3 sets of required school uniform and at least 1 set required PE uniform for those who are in school, shoes, and slippers. Next is toiletries, consists of personal supplies, face towel, toothbrush, soap, and shampoo to be given up upon admission. Toothpaste may be given after meal, after waking up, and before sleeping. Linen consists of pillow, blankets, pillowcases, mosquito nets, if needed upon admission. So these services or these things are given to them upon admission. So health services cover physical examination, laboratory, medicines, dental checkup, and treatment, including psychological evaluations. So next is the Child and Youth Welfare Code. So the code shall be known as the Child and Youth Welfare Code. It shall apply to persons below 21 years of age, except those emancipated in accordance with law. So child or minor or youth as used in this code shall refer to such persons. As all children shall be entitled to the rights herein set forth without distinction as to legitimacy or illegitimacy, sex, social status, religion, political antecedents, and other factors. So every child is endowed with the dignity and worth of a human, of course, from being from the moment of his conception as generally accepted in medical parlance, and has therefore the right to be born well. Every child has the right to a wholesome family life that will provide him with love, care, and understanding, guidance and counseling, and moral material security. So the dependent or abandoned child shall be provided with the nearest substitute for a home. Every child has the right to to a well-rounded development of his personality to the end that he may become a happy, useful, and active member of the society. Gifted child shall be given opportunity and encouragement to develop his special talents. The emotionally disturbed or socially maladjusted child shall be treated with sympathy and understanding and shall be entitled to treatment and competent care. The physically or mentally handicapped child shall be given the treatment, education, and care required by his particular condition. So number 4, every child has the right to a balanced diet, adequate clothing, sufficient shelter, proper medical attention, and all the basic physical requirements of a healthy, vigorous life. Every child has the right to be brought up in an atmosphere of morality and rectitude for the enrichment and strengthening of his character. Number 6, every child has the right to an education commensurate with his abilities to the development of his skills for the improvement of his capacity for service to himself and to his fellow men. Number 7, every child has the right to full opportunities for safe and wholesome recreation and activities, individual as well as social, for the wholesome use of his leisure hours. And number 8, every child has the right to protection against exploitation, improper influences, hazards, and other conditions or circumstances prejudicial to his physical, mental, emotional, social, and moral development. Number 9, every child has the right to live in a community and a society that can offer him an environment free from pernicious influences and conducive to the promotion of his health and the cultivation of his desirable traits and attributes. Number 10, every child has the right to the care, assistance, and protection of the state, particularly when his parents or guardians fail or are unable to provide him with his fundamental needs for growth, development, and improvement. And number 11, every child has the right to an efficient and honest government that will deepen his faith in democracy and inspire him with the morality of the constituted authorities both in their public and private lives. So next is the death row. The death row is also known as the condemned row, is a place in a prison that houses inmates awaiting execution after being convicted for a capital crime. So the term is also used figuratively to describe the state of awaiting execution or being in a death row. Even in places with no special facility or separate unit for condemned inmates exist in the United States. In the United States, after a person is found guilty of a capital offense in death penalty states, the judge will give the jury the option of imposing a death sentence or life imprisonment without possibility of parole. So it is then up to a jury to decide whether to give the death sentence. This usually has to be an anonymous decision. If the jury agrees on death, the defendant will remain on death row during appeal and habeas corpus procedures, which may continue for several years. Opponents of capital punishments claim that prisoners' isolation and uncertainty over fate constitute psychological abuse, and that especially long-time death rows inmates are prone to develop a mental disorder if they do not already suffer such a condition. This is referred to the death row phenomenon. Estimations reveal that 5 to 10% of all inmates on death row suffer from mental illness. Some inmates may attempt suicide. There have been some calls for a ban of the imposition of death penalty for inmates with mental illness, and also case law such as Atkins versus Virginia to further this. Executions still take place for those with clear intellectual disabilities due to poor legal representation and high standards of proof. And last is the rule on the writ of amparo. The Section 1, petition. The petition for a writ of amparo is a remedy available to any person whose right to life, liberty, and security is violated or threatened with violation by an unlawful act or omission of a public official or employee or of a private individual or entity. The writ shall cover extra-legal killings or enforce disappearances or threats thereof. Section 2. Who may file? The petition may be filed by the aggrieved party or by any qualified person or entity in the following order. The first one is any member of the immediate family, namely the spouse, children, and parents of the aggrieved party. Second, or letter B, any ascendant, descendant, or collateral relative of the aggrieved party within the fourth civil degree of consanguinity or affinity in default of those mentioned in the preceding paragraph. Or C, any concerned citizen, organization, association, or institution if there is no known member of the immediate family or relative of the aggrieved party. Section 3. Where to file? The petition may be filed on any day at any time with the regional trial court at of the place where the threat, act, or omission was committed, any of its elements occurred, or with the Sandigan Bayan, the Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court, or any justice such courts. The writ shall be enforceable anywhere in the Philippines. Section 4. The docket fees. The petitioner shall be exempted from the payment of the docket and other lawful fees when filing the petition. The court, justice, or judge shall docket the petition and act upon it immediately. Section 5. Contents of petition. The petition shall be signed and verified and shall allege the following. So the first one is the personal circumstances of the petitioner. B is the name and personal circumstances of the respondent responsible for the threat, act, or omission, or if the name is unknown or uncertain, the respondent may be described by an assumed affiliation. And letter C, the right to life, liberty, and security of the aggrieved party violated or threatened with violation by an unlawful act or omission of the respondent, and how such threat or violation is committed with the attendant circumstances detailed in supporting affidavits. And Section 6, issuance of the writ. Upon the filing of the petition, the court, justice, or judge shall immediately order the issuance of the writ of its face it ought to issue. Section number 7, penalty for refusing to issue or serve the writ. So, a clerk of court who refuses to issue the writ after its allowance, or a deputized person who refuses to serve the same, shall be punished by the court, justice, or judge to contempt without prejudice to other disciplinary actions. Section 8, how the writ is served. The writ shall be served upon the respondent by a judicial officer, by a person deputized by the court, justice, or judge, who shall retain a copy in which to make a return service. In case the writ cannot be served personally on the respondent, the rules on substituted service shall apply. Section 9. Return contents. Within 72 hours after service of the writ, the respondent shall file a verified written return together with the supporting affidavits, which shall, among the other things, contain the following. So the first one is the lawful defenses to show that the respondent did not violate or threaten with violation to the right of life, liberty, and security of the aggrieved party through any act of omission. And Section 10, defenses not pleaded deemed waived. All defenses shall be raised in return, otherwise they shall be deemed waived. And Section 11, prohibited pleadings and motions. So the following pleadings and motions are prohibited. The first one is motion to dismiss. B, motion for extension of time to file return, opposition, affidavit, position paper, and other pleadings. C, dilatory motion for postponement. D, motion for a bill of particulars. E, counterclaim or cross-claim. F, third-party complaint. G. Reply. H. Motion to declare respondent in default. I. Intervention. J. Memorandum. K. Motion for consideration of interlocutory orders or interim relief orders. And I. Petition for certiorari mandamus or prohibition against any interlocutory order. So that's the last part of my report for the Module 4.